The Korean War, often called the Forgotten War, was anything but forgettable for those who lived through it. It was a brutal conflict that spanned from June 25, 1950 to July 27, 1953, and its effects still resonate today. To understand how it all began, we need to rewind to the end of World War II. When Japan surrendered in 1945, its 35-year occupation of Korea came to an end. The Korean Peninsula, long a pawn in regional geopolitics, was suddenly divided at the 38th parallel. The Soviet Union took control of the north, while the United States occupied the south. This division was meant to be temporary, but as Cold War tensions escalated, the ideological chasm grew wider. In the north, Kim Il-sung emerged as the leader, establishing a communist regime backed by the Soviet Union and later China. Meanwhile, in the south, Syngman Rhee became president, leading a government aligned with the United States. Both leaders claimed to be the rightful rulers of the entire peninsula, and neither was interested in compromise. By 1950, North Korea, heavily armed and encouraged by Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, was ready to act. On June 25, 1950, North Korean forces launched a surprise attack across the 38th parallel, quickly overrunning much of South Korea. It was a blitzkrieg-style assault that caught the South and its American allies off guard. The United Nations, with the United States at the helm, responded swiftly. Under General Douglas MacArthur, a multinational force was assembled to repel the invasion. By September 1950, UN forces had pushed the North Koreans back to the brink of defeat with a daring amphibious landing at Incheon. It was a stunning success, but MacArthur, known for his flair for drama, wasn't done yet. Against warnings from both Washington and his own advisers, MacArthur pushed northward, crossing the 38th parallel and advancing toward the Yalu River on the Chinese border. To him, it seemed like the war was as good as won. But then the Chinese intervened. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese troops poured across the border in what can only be described as a military avalanche. The sudden entry of Chinese forces turned the tide, forcing the UN troops into a chaotic retreat. Bitter fighting ensued, and by early 1951, the war had settled into a bloody stalemate near the original dividing line at the 38th parallel. Despite the lack of major territorial gains on either side, the war dragged on for 2 more years. Negotiations for an armistice began in July 1951, but they were painfully slow. Disputes over issues like prisoner exchanges and territorial boundaries kept the talks gridlocked. On July 27, 1953, an armistice was finally signed. It established the Korean Demilitarized Zone, a heavily fortified border that still exists today. The war officially ended in a draw, with neither side achieving its ultimate goal of unifying the peninsula under its rule. The human cost was staggering. Millions of Korean civilians were killed or displaced, while military casualties numbered in the hundreds of thousands. The war left both North and South Korea devastated, setting the stage for decades of tension and hostility. And yet, the Korean War remains overshadowed by other conflicts like World War II and Vietnam. Perhaps that's because it didn't have a clear winner, or maybe it's because it feels like a conflict frozen in time. Its scars still visible, its resolution still elusive. Today, the Korean Peninsula remains divided, a living reminder of the Cold War's legacy. For all its forgotten status, the Korean War shaped the modern world in profound ways, reminding us of the devastating cost of division and the fragile nature of peace.